So you put that.
That place that go to YouTube now.
Content.
Go to content, go to live. Then you will see link. Then help us put description in the description part.
You might not pay me more for the
That way we'll pay them maybe for 2025 election.
It's still on you, Mr. Apple.
No. We'll refresh.
Go on, pass it. Go on.
Mr. Collins,
Mr. Collins,
you can
leave
get off the
VPN
call.
and join us live.
Where should I join?
The link is being sent to the group.
I think I said
Join that jitsu.
Tell him to join that JIT now.
I should join.
Then online you can leave this JIT now. Tell him to join the JIT.
Oh, did you not sit down? I've left it. I've told him to join it. We will notify you. I've told him to join it. No answer.
So are you guys set? Have you sent the link to
I've sent to their live, join us.
who is starting? Please help us to view that link. Do you have a list?
I don't have a sheet. Because I need a put that can see what's happening.
We have someone
Hola, what should I do? I will need Kilo rupe.
Oraimo Welcome to our live election coverage of the Anambra 2025 governorship election, coming to you right here on Viewpoint, where we discover perspective and embrace dialogue. Today, history unfolds in the heartbeat of the Southeast as the people of Anambra State head to the polls to decide their future. Our team of on-ground correspondents and studio analysts will bring you real-time updates, verified reports from polling units, live interviews, situation reports, and insightful political analysis as the day progresses. From voter turnout to INEC updates, from candidate stronghold to the polls of the electorate, we've got it all covered. The drums of democracy are echoing across the heart of Anambra State, from the bustling streets of Awka to the market of Onitsha and the quiet towns of Nnewi. The people stand at a crossroad, ready to decide who will shape their destiny for the next 4 years. This is not just another election. This is a battle for the soul of Anambra, a contest of vision, power, and the people's will. As dawn breaks over the east, every ballot becomes a voice, every vote a statement, and every moment history in motion. The candidates are poised, the parties are restless, and the nation is watching. Will the tide favor continuity or change? Will the voices of the streets rise above the whispers of the corridors of power? Stay with us, I'm Olaiton Babatunde, and with me in the studio is a political analyst expert, Odiawa Heha. How are you doing? I'm sure you're ready for the Anambra election. All right, so let's watch some amateur videos that is on what is happening right now in Anambra State.
Here in excise their franchise. This is unprecedented. We're told that this is the first time INEC officials will be here by that time, by 7:30 in the morning on election day. But the irony and the contrast is that why the INEC officials just set up their materials here for election, youths were playing football around the area. That is the situation here.
Looking at that amateur video that we just saw now, it shows the readiness in Anambra State to an extent because the youth are seen as people who should be on the queue trying to vote, and yet we see them playing football. What can you say about the situation right there?
Well, we can look at it from two sides.
Okay.
First of all, there's been a history of voter apathy, and no doubt, anytime there's an election, why? Because people have lost their faith, trust, and confidence in the electoral empire.
Yeah.
So they see it as typical Nigerian youths. Once there's a holiday, they turn the streets into their football pitch. So it's typical of one of those things we see. Instead of engaging in violence, that's what they resort to vent their anger on voter apathy. But be that as it may, if there's been some, or I'll say outright information based on voter education on why they should actually vote and reassured why their vote will count based on what INEC has actually professed through its new chief now, I think maybe they won't have resorted to playing football on the pitches. Another thing we should also ask is from that amateur footage we saw, we didn't actually get what age brackets were these children? Were they
Okay.
eligible voters? If they were eligible voters, that would be quite sad. They were not totally duly informed. But if they were younger than the required voter age, that's another thing we should also counter that because children want to take advantage of any free period they have to
So
actually play around.
all right. As much as we can see, that is not showing the fact that the people of Anambra are ready for election. We can say one good thing that came out of that is the fact that the INEC officials are already there by 7:30. That shows a lot, and that shows that the INEC are ready for this. So I'd like to know, what factors do you think would determine the political direction of Anambra State for this election?
Well, to look at it, there are so many factors involved. We first of all look at it from INEC, the security operatives, the candidates, and even the electorate. Now, looking at the electoral umpire, we see that there's a new chief in town, and he has actually promised that he's not actually going to be disposed to what the federal say has to give out or dish on to the electoral umpire. That if actually the electoral umpire has to live up to expectation, it has to live up to the first word, which it actually starts with independent body. So as an independent body, it first of all has to live based on that, so it wins the confidence, the trust of everyone. So, and also those under the electoral umpire, also the staff who were recently, educated concerning the new adoption, which is the AI electronic voting. Of course, how well sensitized are they concerning the beavers, and just to make sure all digitalized aspects also, all these things come into play. They are gadgets, all right, and they function. Why? Because it's human beings who operate them.
Yeah.
But these gadgets are also prone to manipulations by humans who are operating them. These are things we should look at from the part of INEC. We should also begin to look at logistic issues based on timing. The riverine areas, how quickly did sensitive materials for voting get to those points? That's another thing. The roads, how badly were they? How bad have they been? These are the things the opponents will actually capitalize on. That their own polling units or the wards in their axes or their local governments, sensitive materials for electoral exercises couldn't actually get there in time. Why? Because it was politicized. Those roads were deliberately not done during the 4-year period so that materials don't get there in time. So votes are delayed, or when by eventually they get there, there's no voting at all. Why? Because the electorate is frustrated under the basking sun. So these are factors we should weigh in from the part of INEC. Now, coming to the security operatives, it's been a case of they themselves having this laissez-faire attitude when it comes to electoral matters. They want to come outside to vote, fine. If people want to indulge in violence, fine. If people want to engage in discrepancies such as vote buying, just to mention if electoral violence, they are like, pussyfooting in the whole matter, either hesitant or reluctant. But this now, the CP now has made a statement in recent reports now building up to this election that they are not after the candidates. They are not after who wins. They are not after who loses. They are actually there to come to do their job based on the directive of, if I may use that language, or guard the top.
Right.
So now, if we look at it now from the security operatives, they have to stick to what is actually a particular characteristics of the civil service, which means neutrality. They ought not to sit down with the electorate. They ought not to sit down with the candidates. They ought to serve the main feature in which they are actually caught out for, which is to protect lives and property. Now, the property here now is INEC's property. It can also be the property which has to be the votes or the ballots, which, of course, the electorates are going to use to cast their votes. Now, the electorates now are the lives in which they need to protect, just to make sure they safeguard the interest of every stakeholder participating within that place. Recently, now they've deployed technology, how far the eyes in the sky, the drones are going to function, how well or how literate enough our police officials are within that axis to operate these drones. That's another factor, because it's not about telling us on the news that you're going to deploy drones in the airspace to cover the elections. What feet can these drones cover? That's another thing. What wider angle can they cover? These are things or factors we should begin to look at. If these things are not taken into cognizance, it begins to be a case of litigations after the elections. For instance, a candidate is saying that the drones which are actually deployed by the police couldn't fly a particular feet or couldn't cover a particular axis. These are things people begin to look at. Even on the part of the electoral observers, these are lapses they will actually bring out there. Even the media, which is actually a fourth pillar of government, also will come in and bring out all these things. Now, I have talked about the electorate, I've talked about the security agencies. Now, talking about the electorate on their own parts, I'm still coming to the candidates, or let me start with the candidates, because looking at the candidates, we have the big four. We have Soludo, who is actually the incumbent, coming from a traditional party that has dominated the axis for close to a decade or more than that. Then we now have the new kid on the block, Nicholas Ukachukwu, who has been endorsed based on federal handshake. How far the federal handshake is going to extend conclusively on a winning note, that is undecided yet until after the elections. Then we now have the new two who tend to share similar ideologies because of their bureaucratic background from the civil service. We're talking about the Labour Party candidates, Mugalo, and also ADC, Nwosu. These two are more or less like moral standard-oriented personnel or candidates coming out to sell their manifestos to the public, that what they see on their manifesto is what they are going to get. It's not a case of empty promises and upon getting there, you can't deliver within 4 years.
4 years.
So these are things which they have been using against the incumbent government. But looking at it now, build up to this day, November 8, 2025, we see that Soludo on his own part has actually been endorsed by even oppositions and also by, of course, the president himself, who is actually from the ruling party of the APC, which is actually the party hosting Nwachukwu. So we look at all these complexities and we now see the kind of fan base these two actually have, which are actually the big two now in question. These two now, Soludo is actually a very good friend of the president.
Okay.
Now, it's kind of dicey. It's like finding self in between the devil and the deep blue sea. And then you have the president from the ruling party who is actually from the ruling party of Nwachukwu. Now, it's not a case of receiving endorsements from the federal handshake. Why? Because we're from the same ruling party. It's more or less like, do I support my nuclear family first or do I support the extended family? So, but hate it or love it or like it or not, Tinubu on his own part cannot turn his back on his party, but being the president at the federal level, he's a father figure. Being the father figure now, he has to maintain neutrality. He cannot be seen he can't be seen playing partisan politics. Why? Because he's the president now as we speak. It was the party that provided him that platform to become president. So he cannot deny how he can only endorse his president, endorse his candidates, which is all well and good, but throwing his weight outrightly behind our own, it becomes dicey. And of course, the mantra will begin to be sung by people around, says because it's from your party, that's why you're celebrating him. So he just needs to maintain neutrality. Now, coming on the part of the electorate now, we also need to look at women have now become more actively involved in Anambra State. I don't know whether it's a psyche thing in Anambra or for Anambra women. They are always active when it comes to things like this. They've really thrown their weight. You could see the deputy governor who is actually deputy candidate who is actually on the APC platform. We also see some other lady who is also on the Showray party who is actually throwing her weight, openly challenging the Awka administration. So there are so many things coming up. Now, when the electorate now, which is now the fourth factor now, which we're talking about, begins to look at all this, they begin to have their own sense of thinking. Do we go for a party that has been here for a long time coming, or do we go for a new taste of wine? Because oftentimes they say old wine is better than new wine, but people wish to taste, have a new taste at the end of the day. So it's a case of, do we continue with the old wine or do we have a new taste of new wine? So that's where Anambra finds itself now with the factors which I've just mentioned.
All right. I feel instead of, having to think about tasting the old wine or the new wine, what really matters is who do you think is ready to deliver? That's really very important. And talking about Mogalu and Umoso saying that there are people who, whenever they say they want to do something, they want to do it really. I think we've had situations where we've met candidates from states talking about their manifestos and it's still not working. They get there and they forget all that they've said because they now have another manifesto which they have to carry out. And talking about the Oga at the top, I can only hope that he's as neutral as it comes, because you have your friend on one side and then you have your party on the other side. The only thing you can do that would make sense at this point is to be neutral. So we have the issue of people defecting from one party to the other. That has been happening for years in Nigeria. You see someone in PDP today and then the next moment they're already joining another party, which I believe, in my own perspective, that it's a little bit wrong, because it shows that you're not loyal to your roots. Why join a party when you don't understand what they stand for in the first place? So I'd like to ask you, how have defection and party realignment reshaped the power dynamics in Anambra politics ahead of 2025?
Well, to begin, looking at it, I would say not just in Anambra politics alone, because whatever affects the federal also has this spillover effect to the state level, Anambra State now to be specific. Now, when we see parties that defect or decamp, I was discussing with someone who calls anyone who defects or decamps political prostitutes. Yeah. Now, when you look at it closely, for you to become a political prostitute, it therefore means you actually don't understand the ideology of your
the
party, because you're paying attention to only one thing, interest. Fine, it's understandable. Politics is all about interest. But is the interest ideological or personal? These are things we should begin to weigh side by side, just supposingly. So when a candidate or a party member decamps, he or she therefore means that he is not serving the interests of the party. He's serving his own interest, his own pocket. And oftentimes, when you get into office, the party which actually brought you in there, you're not now serving the interests of yours alone or your party alone. You are now serving the interests of the people. That is where ideology now comes in. What does your party's ideology now stand for? Some people don't respect this ideology. That's why they begin to cross carpet and decamp wherever they like. Now, zeroing in down now to Anambra now, we haven't really had any anomaly of decamping, unlike the wave of decamping we had in the South, for fear of probably the minority interest, particularly Akwa Ibom State, was quite shocking. Why? Because it had to benefit from the Ibom deep sea ports, hence the realignment with the federal level. And of course, so many other states like that. So if we look at Anambra now, we look at it with a party which has hosted it traditionally for decades, ABGA, and its candidates being a jolly good friend of Tinubu on his own part. We say we don't see any time decamping anytime soon because of statements which have been made. I'm saying this why? Because if you can go online, it's evident there in a visual that Soludo had actually said that their party will actually support any party at the center. So for a party to make that pact, and so far so good, years running, you've not had any distortions in a particular party ruling a particular Southeast nation, it speaks large volumes. So when we now see a ruling party having its candidate as a flag bearer under that party, which is not now recognized, not that it's not recognized, not that it doesn't have a fan base, it does, but it is not traditionally recognized like the ABGA, All Progressives Grand Alliance, which has been born out of sentiments within Anambra State. So ideology is very, very key, because we can see someone who loses an election tomorrow and is dissatisfied. He loses millions or billions in courts, and then he begins to settle out of court. Or probably there's a plea bargain, and he or she doesn't know what to do. To recover all, that's when this decamping begins to take place.
All right. I think I'd agree with you on the fact that the defection thing that happens, it's all about their interests, not what they want to do for the people, because I believe that the party you're in really does not matter if the interest you have at heart is of the people. If you're out to, make sure that you take care of the welfare of the people, I believe that the party you are in does not really matter in executing that. Okay, you're one of you're in the APC party and all, you were able to get your chance and all. You should just serve the interest of the people. You're there to serve, not to lead. But I feel our leaders are more like, I want to lead. But the role of a leader is actually to serve. So to what extent do you believe incumbency and governance performance will influence voter sentiment against the rising opposition forces? Because when we were talking about this Anambra election, someone was saying that, oh, Soludo is a great man. I feel we want Soludo to continue and all that. So I'd like to know, what do you think the influence of the things he has done would have on this election?
Well, I'll begin by saying, oftentimes, I'm still going back to the power of incumbency. It's always been abused here in Nigeria. It's only once it hasn't been abused, and I win by Goodluck Jonathan, where he made a statement where the blood of any Nigerian is not worth his second term or something like that. Now, if we now look at it now, coming from my own train of thought, if you give a people fish continuously, what happens when you're too old to give them fish? You're too weak to give them fish. But a situation whereby you provide them with a solution, like for instance, giving them a fishing hook or fishing net, and of course, mechanized fishing or mechanized farming for fishing. And they've already shown, as far as you're concerned, you've shown them the light. They can catch more fish. They don't need to wait on you to keep bringing them fish. So if Soludo on his own part, based on power of incumbency, it's a two-way thing. If he has performed better by showing them how to use fishing nets, not just showing them how to use fishing nets, but providing them with fishing nets to catch fish in his 4-year tenure, or maybe fishing taps or whatever, providing them resources to function, fine. Power of incumbency can rule legitimately, even without being maneuvered. But if he didn't succeed in providing amenities or solutions during his 4-year tenure, then we can now say he can be mischievous when it comes to power of incumbency. So that these are things we weigh side by side. And once he is not functioning and now wants to upturn based on incumbency, we now begin to see the oppositions coming in with their propaganda. That is where some other people, the people-centric party, the Mama Papa Pikin, I'm talking about Labour Party, engaging in their protests, saying how they can upturn or unseat based on impeachment. Influence begins to set in coming from the state legislature. So all these factors come into play. So far you have a winning side or a winning team and you're acting right in politics, fine, all well and good. But there's another angle to it. The power of incumbency. Typically, our democracy says 1 year tenure, which is 4 years,
Yeah.
2 tenures, which is 8 years. But the typical African mentality, we die here. We never want to leave. So those are other things we should begin to look at also. Yeah. They want to change the constitution, maneuver some things. Okay, the election was inconclusive. We need to extend my stay in office. Why? Because we've actually postponed the elections. All those kind of things come into play.
All right, I really hope we can get to a point in Nigeria where we have our candidates just choose one tenure and allow other people to also have their chances. I'm not sure that's ever going to happen, but then we can only hope that that would happen. So we have our on-field correspondent on the line to give us real-time information on the things that are happening in Anambra State. Good morning, Francis Hogo. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hello, good morning. How are you doing?
Good. Good morning, Lighton.
All right. So I would like to ask you, what is the electoral climate like in Anambra this morning?
Okay, so right now I'm at Aguata local government, specifically at Isofia, the polling center of the state governor. And so behind me are voters who are all seated for the elections. But unfortunately, I'm seeing more of the aged who are paying more interest in coming out to vote for their candidates. So out of the 16 contestants for this election, we are likely to see a very tight contest. Now, yesterday we had the Commissioner of Police moving around with the team to ensure that adequate security is provided. And in fact, over 50,000 policemen have been deployed all around the state to ensure that security is beefed up in the area. Now, the 2 days ago, we had the Central Bank of Nigeria coordinating the disbursement of sensitive materials to the 21 local government agents across the state. And they all attested to the fact that the whole thing is going on smoothly and transparently. So I expected to see a free and fair election. But even as I yesterday, because of the population of security men across town, some observers were saying that. Hello, are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, so observers were afraid that the presence of security will scare off voters. But the Commissioner of Police for the election said it is not aimed at scaring off voters, but that it is aimed at truncating every effort of mischief in the state. So at this moment, we are seeing voting going on smoothly in Aguata local government as well as every other part of the state.
All right, thank you very much. So I'd like to know from the look of things, how well, okay, looking at it, we have about, if we're to calculate it, we have about 2,380 police officers, dispersed in all this local government. And with what you're saying, people are now saying that the number of security that they have is what's scaring them off. But then we have the aged coming out to vote. What does that have to say about political apathy in Anambra State?
Okay, so talking about the presence of the police and other security agencies. In fact, I was even citing detachments from even as far as Lagos. So the Commissioner of Police has said the whole detachment of police, the NSCDC, and every other security agency are to take charge of security in Awka. So 50,000, over 50,000 policemen were drafted from across Nigeria, detachments, and even the military, posted to every part of the town. And so while we were at the state command of the Nigerian police force, the Commissioner of Police
said the show of force is not meant to scare voters away, but to ensure that no effort of mischief makers will truncate this election. So the stakeholders are going around to ensure that people are out to vote. In fact, people are out, but most of them are not voting. The ones that are playing on the streets are there. The ones that are just coming around to watch are there, and even the ones that are coming to make brisk sales of water, drinks, and other things. So there's likely to be voter apathy, but not under security pressure or scare. So we are expected to see more people coming out to vote, but as at the moment, we are seeing more of old people coming from far and wide to make sure that they cast their votes in this election.
All right. Do you think the All Progressive Grand Alliance still holds the emotional grip in Anambra State with the look of things?
Okay, I don't see. I expect to see a. Yesterday, I was with the that Dr. Nicholas Sukachuku at his hotel. Now we are expected to see a very unpredictable power play in from the federal, because the impression is that because of the opposition, that the presidency may favor the APC candidate against the incumbent. But here, Soludo is in charge of his state and he is expected to control whatever goes on in the state. Now, for everything that has gone on in the power play system, we are seeing a little interference of the federal in what is going on in the state elections. So the only thing I'm knowing that is that the federal is making sure that everything around security is guaranteed in the state, so people don't have opportunities to cause mischief around the elections.
All right. So talking about the federal, I'm sure you're talking about the president. So I'd like to know, with the influx of political money and Godfather influence, can the 2025 Anambra election truly be described as the contest of ideas?
I think yes, I will agree with that. But I think it's too early to see or to really predict the outcome. Well, if voter apathy influences the turnout of votes, then we should be able to say, okay, we cannot really generalize the opinion of the general voters, because it is only when they come out to vote that we can say, okay, they voted for A, they voted for B. But at the moment, there's a fair share of power and outplay from between the APC, which of course represents the opposition party, and the incumbent Abga of of the governor. So for now, maybe until as the election go on, we can now say, okay, this is going to be the likely outcome of this. So for now, it is too early to really predict. But for it's going fairly, it's going smoothly. Security is beefed up everywhere. In fact, stakeholders are in unity. There's no clash between political parties and anything of sort.
All right, thank you. Before I let you go, I'd like to ask you lastly, how credible do you think INEC's promise of a transparent and technology-driven Anambra election will be given Nigeria's past electoral controversies?
Please come again on that. The network was breaking.
Oh, okay. So I'd like to know, the INEC promised a transparent and technology-driven Anambra election. Also, given our
Yes.
past, electoral controversies, how do you think this would have effect?
Okay, so that is we observe that the state is really prepared technological wise to drive this election. So many things were done transparently. In fact, we were at the INEC office and with the VEP officers from Abuja. Everything has been done smoothly. In fact, even as close as the INEC tags for journalists, we had pictures on the tags, which has not been like that before. This is just to make sure that everything is controlled. So for technology, we also have a lot of observers, international observers, who have deployed a lot of devices to monitor these elections to ensure that everything goes on smoothly. We have monitoring apps, we have incidents reports, all of them are deployed through technology. So we are seeing the state introducing so many things. In fact, the disability group has deployed thousands of um, interpreters, sign language interpreters, who will monitor these elections and make sure that these disabilities communities are not disenfranchised in this whole process. So I think technology is really playing out in this election so far.
All right. Thank you very much, Francis, for joining us on the morning session. We'll see you during the afternoon session.
All right, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so looking at the situation of things, we have the security on standby in Anambra State, and looking at the fact that we have about 21 local governments, and like I said, we have they already dispersed about 50,000 securities, and calculating it, that means approximately in each state, or sorry, in each local government, we should have about 2,380 security officers, which I would say shows how much the police officers and the security agency in the state are ready for the election. But yet, what we are hearing now is that the people are scared to come out. Why would that be happening?
Well, there's been a history of voter intimidation. Let me come from that angle. You won't compare a rural centric area with an urban centric area such as Lagos, Abuja, or Port Harcourt, where people will come out and they are not even scared of the barrel of guns, be you a police officer, a military personnel, name it. They will still come out. These areas, particularly Anambra, if we will recall, has been totally shaken by insecurity coming from the kidnappings, the abductions, or even the recent IPOB clashes. We could hear recently from some correspondents on media personnel were actually kidnapped or abducted 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, three to be specific. So it's only normal for people to begin to develop this psychology of voter intimidation. Why? Because they've seen heavily armed military personnel or police personnel all over the place. But regardless, it's still important. Why? Because there are people who want to actually engage in anomalies such as electoral violence. That is why these 2,000 plus people are actually stationed there. You never can tell the intel they must have actually gotten before we're deployed to that place. They actually must have also had a particular figure which must have been deployed to Anambra State to cover the elections. But for it to have been beefed up again, information must have gotten to them. So they must have, because of the insecurities which I've just talked about, and of course we heard about the Free Nnamdi Kanu hashtag. That alone, we saw what happened during NSAS. NSAS hashtag sparked off a whole lot within the 36 states. So a simple hashtag can actually upturn an election. And when it upturns an election like that, it becomes a history case in secondary schools and in universities as